I'm never sure quite how quickly it reverses, but I think there has been a very big decline, and it's very hard to track. Harvard's probably still, in some sense, the first among equals. They still have a $50 billion endowment. They can keep going for a very long time. But yeah, these things can go bad without people being able to correct it or notice it. So there's a I always think that cities are very different from companies. Companies normally have a finite lifespan, and companies, there's a limit to how bad the politics in a company can get, because if it gets too messed up, the company just goes bankrupt. You go out of business. In a city, the average city that exists, that ever was founded, still exists in the world today. And your average city is an immortal being. It lasts forever. And at some point you can mess it up so badly, it goes broke, or it gets destroyed. Carthage gets destroyed. Maybe Detroit is, past the point of no return. But the network effects in cities are so powerful that there are a lot of these in-between cities where they can be extremely bad, extremely dysfunctional, and can persist for a long time. And I think if you modeled it, universities are actually closer to cities than companies. The top universities in the country were the ones that have been around for close to 400 years at this point. Harvard, Yale, Stanford was the big top university west of the Mississippi. So there's something about them that's very durable. But and if an immortal being goes bad, it can go very bad for a long time.
Well, the meme that they started doing after the election was, we need our own Joe Rogan. And it's like, you guys had Joe Rogan. It's because you were so hysterical that you created all of us.
I think he was a Bernie Sanders supporter, right?
Right. So you've got to kind of admire their ability to purge people and put us all together. But as we...
or they had, I don't know, they had RFK.
They had Tulsi. They had Elon.
They had all these people.
Yeah, and somehow they've all come around to largely your...
And I think there were very different stories for all of them in terms of where the shifts happened. But again, one of them was at some point, the need to be in lockstep was too much. It's if you have to have a full frontal lobotomy to remain a good Democrat in good standing, it's too much. One of the other changes that's happened that's I think quite extraordinary is the only party, the only group that still believes in the elite universities in a way are the conservative Republicans. And so if President Trump were here, he would tell you that he went to Penn, Ivy League school. Only very smart people, David, go to Penn. Yeah. And he'd talk about that for quite a while. And J.D. Vance went to Yale Law School. It's the top law school in the country. And, at the margins, there are other reasons we think he's good, but this is a credential we like about him. And any sort of elite credentialing has collapsed on the left. It was, Bill Clinton was a Rhodes Scholar, Yale Law. Hillary Clinton was Yale Law. Obama was Harvard Law. I think Kerry was Harvard undergrad. Mm-hmm. And there was some way, the Democratic Party used to be more elite. And then when Biden said he was a transitional candidate, it wasn't a transition. He was not going to have a sex change operation, but it was transitional from smart to dumb, from elite to very non-elite. And then, Kamala was even, Howard was not Harvard. You couldn't even point this out. This is probably a racist thing to say or something. Right. And then by the time you get to Walz, it's way worse. It's the credentials are even dumber than Kamala's. There are no smart people left. And it's like a generational change. I think, I think Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi, they were talented people, very, in some meritocratic sense, were very impressive, are very impressive. And then, there's not one younger Democrat who's in that league. I don't know, Gavin Newsom, University of Santa Clara. Shapiro was probably too smart to put on the ticket, but it's Georgetown
He was
Law
also
School.
too Jewish to put on the ticket.
Well, maybe that too, but
Yeah.
Georgetown Law School is like number 14. So even Josh Shapiro is so far below what you had with someone like Clinton or Obama, and so I think, and then I don't know how much one should read into it, but I'm tempted to say they don't want people who are smart. They don't, being the elite thing used to be, okay, you could think for yourself a little bit. You were part of this club where, behind closed doors, we could have a conversation and we could have somewhat dissenting views and we could hash things out. I don't think any of this goes on anymore. And, we just want these NPC robots.
How much of that do you think is connected to Harvard as an institution? I've been to plenty of dinners at your places, and Harvard comes up an awful lot. Just what's gone on there, the rot, how it's changed, the endowment, all of these things that I don't come from that world. So I don't think I ever fully understood. I would always think, why is everyone so obsessed with what's going on at Harvard? But when you describe what you just described there, that the elites in their own way could do the behind closed doors thing and agree to disagree and have conversation, yet they created a system that churned out robots. It seems that Harvard is Harvard the epicenter of that? And what is that?
Harvard is probably, there are a number of these schools. There's some way where Harvard was the first among equals, and there was part of it that was an exclave of Washington D.C. or the Kennedy School of Government, and the Harvard Economics Department used to have a tremendous say in economic policy, and so and then there was there's probably some Harvard Massachusetts thing with I don't know, Kennedy, McGovern was from Massachusetts. You have, there was a way that Dukakis was Massachusetts, Kerry was Massachusetts, Obama was Harvard. So it was this very, very conservative power structure. I think there were only two Democrat presidents that Carter pretended to be allied with the Northeast establishment, and then he sort of double-crossed them halfway through his term and replaced them with all these Georgia people. But then they got back at him and primaried him with Ted Kennedy, who was, again, a Harvard person. And then I think Clinton was arguably the one person who, it was Yale, but who somehow managed to outflank the Harvard people. But if maybe almost going back to JFK, it's been an incredible part of the power structure. And then I think in a strange way, it's gone. I think if you were a liberal, student, let's say a liberal white male at Harvard, there's no longer any, maybe there's still some way you can get a track towards a good job on Wall Street or in Silicon Valley, but it no longer seems to track into the center-left establishment. When Alan Bloom spoke at Harvard in the late 1980s, this sort of obnoxious way he started his speech was "my fellow elitists," because it was like everybody at Harvard was really elitist. Right. They pretended not to be.
Yeah.
Today
you could never.
You couldn't even. They would. They all say no. We're all so egalitarian, and then if you're a Harvard student, you shouldn't expect anything more from that, and you should, you're not special because you're here. So somehow, you had this egalitarian rhetoric for a long time, but it's somehow, the form is the same, but the substance has changed.
So as a guy that has encouraged an awful lot of young people to not go to college, and I'm very happy to say that virtually everyone I've hired is now a college dropout. It's become a running joke around here. I only hire college dropouts, and it works every time. I mean, do you take some sort of like personal pleasure in that these institutions that churned out the robots actually are in this decline now?
I'm never sure quite how quickly it reverses, but I think there has been a very big decline, and it's very hard to track. Harvard's probably still, in some sense, the first among equals. They still have a $50 billion endowment. They can keep going for a very long time. But these things can go bad without people being able to correct it or notice it. So there's a you know, I always think that cities are very different from companies. Companies normally have a finite lifespan, and companies, there's a limit to how bad the politics in a company can get, because if it gets too messed up, the company just goes bankrupt. You go out of business. In a city, the average city that exists, that ever was founded, still exists in the world today. And your average city is an immortal being. It lasts forever. And at some point you can mess it up so badly, it goes broke, or it gets destroyed. Carthage gets destroyed. Maybe Detroit is, past the point of no return. But the network effects in cities are so powerful that there are a lot of these in-between cities where they can be extremely bad, extremely dysfunctional, and can persist for a long time. And I think if you modeled it, universities are actually closer to cities than companies. The top universities in the country were the ones that have been around for close to 400 years at this point. Harvard, Yale, Stanford was the big top university west of the Mississippi. So there's something about them that's very durable. But and if an immortal being goes bad, it can go very bad for a long time.
Does that tell you that we need institutions in some sense, even if they have largely been rotted out? That's something about the continuum from generations. Like, we sort of need these ideas, even if they're not really what we think they are.
I don't know exactly what it says. It tells you that there's not necessarily a straightforward mechanism for replacing Harvard. It also tells you that maybe Harvard can be a lot worse than it looks based on its endowment or the fact that it's still, attracting all these talented people. It can tell you that it's extremely hard to reform internally. Maybe it tells you it's important to keep trying. So I don't disagree with conservatives who try to influence these things and, try to keep, try to figure out a way to do it. I'm probably a little bit black-pilled on doing it myself.
Mm-hmm.
It does tell you it's probably quite hard to come up with alternative institutions. But then at some point you have these occasional points where you have these phase shifts and people realize they're working so badly. And maybe the Democratic Party has realized that nothing's coming out of Harvard. And so, we shouldn't particularly privilege these people.
If you're looking for more honest and thoughtful conversations about politics instead of nonstop screaming, check out our politics playlist. And if you want to watch full interviews on a variety of topics, watch our full episode playlist, all right over here. And to get notified of all future videos, be sure to subscribe and click the notification bell.